4th of July. In Hawaii, in the mid-Pacific, the inhabitants of America's 50th state celebrate independence. But are these people really independent, or indeed American? Many don't give the matter a thought, but some strongly feel they are not. Everywhere I travel, I find people obsessed with the lost ancestry of their past. And on this second leg of my journey in the footsteps of Mark Twain, I'm curious to know what it is people are nostalgic for. While America celebrates freedom from British colonial rule, some Hawaiians would like to be free of America.
It's terrible. This represents America taking over our country. What this teaches us, the natives, is how powerful they are. And that we shouldn't ask for our country, we shouldn't fight for our country. Because there they are, and they can kill us at any time. And that's what that represents, is death out there. Beautiful death. Why should anyone be happy about
it? 180 years ago, King Kamehameha ruled here, proudly presiding over an independent Hawaiian nation. The Americans are kings, said Twain, who first came here when the monarchy was still nominally in power. Today's skyline reflects the culture which overtook Hawaii. Roots are fascinating, but here they are so tangled. I'm to meet a woman who's unraveled her own personal family knot. Haunani K. Truss campaigns for Hawaiian sovereignty, but seems most proud of her Irish great-grandparents.
This graveyard is a Catholic graveyard, and my great-grandparents are buried here. They're Irish. As Jeremiah, the husband, apparently said to some friends, I want to go back to the land of the naked women. So, so he came here.
Oh, here we are, Jeremiah O'Neill.
There he is. He was born in Limerick, and there's his wife, Margaret.
O'Neill.
He was born in Dublin. In Hawaii, of course, most Hawaiians are many mixtures, many peoples. And I'm, of course, English, that's what Trask is, and Irish, and Hawaiian.
But of course, even Americans have pretty important O'Neills. Eugene.
Yes, that's right. And of course, Kennedy. When Kennedy was elected, he went to Ireland, so that's always been a strong connection.
Well, even Reagan.
Even Reagan what?
We're in a cemetery.
We're in a cemetery. We should not be behaving that way.
Well, we could say you are Irish. They wouldn't know.
Reverend Mother?
Yes, Reverend Mother. You don't look British at all. So, are you Russian?
Did you see the connection between me and Yeltsin?
Yes, I do, now that you mention it. Yes,
конечно, конечно. Hawaiianskая девочка. Solidarity all the way down the line.
When I'm abroad and at home, I say I'm Hawaiian. And some people say, well, what does that mean? And then I say, I'm native, I'm an indigenous person. And generally the response is favorable. But in particular, I'm very careful not to say that I'm an American. And I think that's where I run into lots of problems with Americans, because they'll say, but isn't Hawaii a part of the United States? And then I say, yes, because in 1893, you invaded my country and overthrew our queen and imprisoned her and forcibly annexed our islands. And they stand there and say, did we do that? And I say, yes, absolutely. And that's why I'm not an American.
Why I'm not an American. The United States heeded this unexpected call of minority voices, and Ancestry was suddenly treated like shares in a genealogical stock exchange. I'm told the stock exchange sits in room 351, if I can ever find it, the Hawaiian Homelands Department. In 1921, the US Congress voted to restore land once taken illegally from Hawaiians. Claimants for that land now have to prove that the blood in their veins is at least 50% Hawaiian. In other words, half ethnically clean.
Which is your grandparents. But by this time, the mother is unknown.
Among others, Jacob Piccolo has come to prove that his blood is sufficiently Hawaiian and so secure a 99-year lease on a plot of land cost $1 a year.
You can apply for residential on one of the islands.
I half wondered if I had any chance of claiming. After all, the Russians had long ago a toehold on these islands. They'd even built a fort.
Whereas on grandma's side, yeah, she's pure Chinese. So in reality, it makes Dad 50% Hawaiian, 50% Chinese. Okay. Then moving on to Mom, we came to the conclusion that your great-grandparents are pure Hawaiian. Okay, giving your grandfather 100%. On grandma's side, yeah, she's pure Chinese. So in reality, it makes Dad 50% Hawaiian, 50% Chinese.
Giving 87.5 for your grandmother and 75 for Daddy, making you 59.375%.
That gives me a 1/32nd English and pushes me out of the 60% Hawaiian. Isn't that too bad that we have
That's terrible.
to?
But you have more English than I have.
Really?
I have none at all.
Oh, okay.
Not one drop. I filled up the form. Don't be frightened. And I have no right to submit it. I just wanted to see how far back I could go, because it never occurred to me.
So your background is?
I'm Russian. I'm exactly half Russian.
And the other half?
And that's why I thought might make an application suggesting that maybe one of my ancestors was a technician who built the Russian fort. Jacob has just been told he is now a legally entitled Hawaiian. I gather it's all gone very well.
Yeah, it has. It's nice to meet you.
Congratulations.
I don't know,
You look strangely Hawaiian to me.
No, the
Actually,
Oriental blood
they
is
said
stronger.
after the haircut I look like a criminal, but
Not a bit. I'm jealous of you. I've got too much hair. And I've got no claim. Those seeking their roots must travel backwards in time. For the descendants who return to this remote Hawaiian island, it's more than a pilgrimage. It's for the evidence they may need to cross that crucial 50% threshold. A century ago, the peninsula of Kalupapa had more arrivals than departures. It was forbidden territory then. People came here to die. Twain was not even allowed to come at all. Kalupapa was, and amazingly still is, a leper colony. Their resistance to disease lowered by their contact with Western culture, native Hawaiians were sent here in their thousands.
Pretty slippery out there. There's a lot of walking.
Those sufferers who remain have chosen to stay here. Meeting me was one of them, Richard Marks, a veteran of a colony which until 1971 was little more than a prison. Now this is a much busier airstrip than I thought it would be.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Things are very different from when you first came.
oh, yes. Very, very
Imagine.
different.
My God.
When the mail used to come down the trail on mules once a week.
Richard is the law around these parts.
And
A sheriff who has happily reversed the stereotype of aggressive traffic cop. Anywhere else, and Clarence, a long-time sufferer, might have expected his open-plan car to land him in court. Somebody's forgotten a packing case or something on his...
That's the hood ornament. That's to keep the hood down.
Oh, I see.
The latch is rusted out, so he doesn't want to be tying strings.
See, he's got no door.
Right. Yeah, that's normal. Zorro. Clarence's favorite companion.
Zorro.
Zorro. Yeah, Peter, I'd like you to... Clarence Naya, Peter Ustinov.
How are you?
You've probably seen him in the movies, you just don't recognize him now, Clarence. He's like Bovades.
Movie actor? I was younger, half a century ago.
Yeah. 100 years ago.
Nero.
He was Nero.
Emperor
in the movie,
Nero.
too, and when they had that big fight. In
Recognize
arena.
the thumb? Perhaps not my most tactful moment. I only then realized Clarence had no thumbs worth speaking of. You're a very young man. Today, there are just 55 residents on Kalupapa living in what feels like a time warp, under the benign law of Sheriff Marks.
We don't pay for insurance on our cars. We never have to worry about stuff like that. We use old licenses that expired in '59 when Hawaii became a state. These guys been driving 50, 60 years. The cars look beat up, but you take the license away from these people, what they gonna do?
As we drive off in his bus, the sheriff obeys his own law of the road. With many nearly blind people still driving, the rule is, on passing approaching vehicle, swerve off the road completely, keeping to the speed limit of 5 miles an hour. Would-be Hawaiians seeking proof of their past do not have an easy task. Inmates' names were often changed to protect their loved ones.
Now this is the biggest of our cemeteries. Thousands of unmarked graves. Because it was considered such a disgrace to be named as a leper that nobody would admit they had a disease in their families. So now people are trying to claim, you know, their Hawaiian ancestry so they qualify for the land. Well, I'm looking for my grandmother's grave. When did she come in? I'm not sure. What was her name? I don't know.
Today, the sheriff often finds himself showing people around who are searching for evidence of those very relatives. But Marks has relatives here too. 2 generations of his family were incarcerated here before him.
Yeah, this is our family plot right here.
Ooh,
Be careful.
I've got it.
Yeah,
Yes, I see you haven't changed the name.
Yeah, the newest one is my brother. Next to him, my dad.
Leprosy, which is an abstract word about a certain disease, is not talked about. It's now called Hansen's disease.
Right.
But there must be hundreds of Norwegians named Hansen who feel the same about their disease now that it's been identified with them as
That's
leprosy,
true.
which was identified with nobody at all but little bells in the Bible.
Right. Well, to be honest with you, almost everyone here says Hansen's. I'm the only one who says leprosy. I'm a leper. I'm not ashamed of it.
No, absolutely.
They're trying to cover it. To me, giving it a new name is trying to cover it up. It means you got something to hide, something to be ashamed of.
Western diseases and intermarriage have drastically reduced the mathematically pure Hawaiian population to around 5,000. But language endures, and a resurgent affinity with the past is troubling these paradise islands. Back in Honolulu, the parcel this young man is handling so cautiously contains human bones. Bones on Hawaii are venerated as never before as evidence of an unattainable past, of glory, independence, and self-expression. Bones which must be laid to rest far at sea in a state-funded ritual.
The burial practices of Hawaiians was such that they buried everywhere. They lived, they buried in the backyard, they buried in the mountains, in the beaches. Nobody anticipated this development here. My building, I live right over there in that top, on the red top, they found burials when they built that building. The law that established our program was a result in Maui of over 1,000 remains, Native Hawaiian burials just being moved for a hotel. And Hawaiians came out and said, "What are you guys doing?"
Each new building site produces a fresh crop of bones. Each time, by law, all building must stop.
I think, Dale, we're looking right at the right place, aren't we?
It's the job of the burial boys to call in the Honolulu Police Department if there are suspicious circumstances.
When you find human remains, we ask that any work has to stop.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
if something looks suspicious, then HPD gets in touch with their medical examiner and so on.
Sure.
And if it's ours, we can pretty much tell.
How did they become what they are?
I'm an attorney, and my parents said, hey, go to law school so you won't have to be a grave digger. And I went to law school, and now I'm a grave digger, and I'm as happy as I can be. It's something that we find very spiritually rewarding, and can't think of any other job we'd rather be doing.
Okay, so today we commit the remains of our kupuna back to the ocean. And we ask for Kekoa's blessing. I
think for Hawaiians as a whole, when we take care of our ancestors, it gives you a cultural foundation upon which to build. There's an acknowledgement of the connection between you and the past. And that is something I think Native peoples and Native Hawaiians, they know this, inherently from our upbringing. You cannot know where you're going if you don't know where you've been.
It's a moving thought. And yet for some people along Mark Twain's 100-year-old route, the past is not a happy place to dwell. Unless, of course, the future shows even less promise. A beautiful death indeed. Next stop, Australia. I have come, just as Mark Twain did before me, to the place where he said heaven and hell came together. Here, on Australia's island state, Tasmania, stand the ruins of an empire's most brutal legacy. To this place, the worst convicts came, and an aura of unpleasantness still hangs like a curse over these stones.
This is the place where they sent people crazy.
Oh my God.
Yes, and the only heating going was for the guards. All these cells, absolutely freezing. And what would they have to bribe a guard with in a cell when they've been stripped bare when they come into the prison?
They were not allowed to communicate with each other, right?
That's right.
Themselves.
Yes, this is an absolutely silent prison. Let's call it a monastery almost,
Yeah,
like one of those closed order monasteries.
Yeah.
These fellows could answer yes or no to the doctor or the magistrate going into the cell, or they could sing hymns in the chapel over here. Look at that.
Oh, God.
Total isolation everywhere, including in church.
Would you believe it?
Each convict is led in, and the door is closed behind the previous one. Bang. And then that door is slammed. And there's a lock down there. So all I can see is the parson out the front. I can't see anybody down below. I can't see anybody either side. I can't see anybody behind me. So there am I for the next 3/4 of an hour for hellfire and damnation preaching.
Dearly beloved, what irony in that phrase when directed towards anonymous people. Isolation was the punishment. So when they came in here, and the clergyman, standing where I am now, would say, "We will now sing hymn 128 in ancient and modern." Can you imagine the raw, the release, the proof that people had still the capacity to talk and to sing words more complicated than yes and no? Dearly beloved, indeed. Amen.
Across the water on Australia's mainland, the raw energy of this cruel past seems somehow alive in modern white Australia. Not everyone here is so curious about their past. Twain had written, "God made the harbor, but Satan made Sydney." The truth is, Satan spoke with an Oxford accent. When Twain arrived, the Aborigines were already dispossessed. The only Australians he met here were white, defined by an English friendliness with English shyness and self-consciousness left out. I was about to discover how little had changed.
I'm all right. Can see more? Oh, I see. Oh, thank you very much. Yes, I realize that. Yes.
What's that doing here?
They're recording me talking to you.
Got any pets at home?
Any what, kids?
Any pets?
Pets?
Ever had a budgie?
A budgie I've never had, no.
Well, my friend had one, which used to sit next to and watch TV.
I mean, now I'm seeing everything. Yeah. If I'd been sitting there, I'd only have you to look at, which is enough, of course. But
he's a funny man, isn't he?
Oh, I don't think
You're
I'm
a
very
funny
funny.
man.
No, I'm rather serious and sad character.
And when you see them all get up, you get up.
Yes, like church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Behave yourself.
Coming from you, I certainly will.
Twain delightfully described Australia as a young girl stroking Mother England's old grey head. And in places, she's stroking it still.
There are women who are thrifty. There are women who have lots of sex. Appeal. Sex appeal.
So, Peter, can I get you a drink?
I've got some mineral water behind me, which I'm hiding.
I've come to dinner at St. Paul's College, a part of Sydney University, which is reawakening all my worst memories of English public school.
There are women who are very There are women who are married. There are women who have tarried. There are women who don't talk much.
Here is the embodiment of a white Anglo establishment, the descendants of the original colonisers.
Benedictus benedicat Iesum Christum Dominum nostrum.
It's extraordinary that in Australia one should find every evening this all-male formality combined with incomprehensible rituals which always make me worry about doing the wrong thing. Still, one must be polite.
We've got a hell of a lot of nonsense going on here at the moment about an Australian identity. But our press seems to go on and on and on about an identity as though you could put 17 or 18 million people and say, there's one. It's just absurd.
In any case, I think it's quite possible to have your roots in civilized behavior and leave it at that.
Oh, that's a good one. Mind you, if you said that here publicly, you might get a bit of a horse laugh. I've always said any Vietnamese that can swim here, bringing their gold with them, is infinitely preferable to the $10 a head bloody homie coming out. I don't know where my social service is, you know. I come here and I can't find out where I get my money. Oh, drive you bloody mad.
But there's another Australia which Mark Twain never saw. It is black and it is poor, an inner suburb within sight of Sydney's heroic skyline. No land is occupied which is not stolen, wrote Twain. When Australia was claimed by the British, its 640 Aboriginal tribes were utterly dispossessed, unable even to vote until 1967. It's a bitter ancestry in a very them and us world.
Being Aboriginal especially, you get criticised for it all the time. I mean, there's more white people living in Australia than there's Aboriginal people, and yet they don't talk about the alcohol or the drug dependency that they depend on. They always look at us as being, I suppose, the outcast.
There's a whole stereotype, if you like, that all Aboriginal people, they're lazy, they're drunks, you know. It's like we're born to be like this.
It's very typical in the nature of prejudice itself.
Yes, yes.
I know my daughter kept on bringing black students back to tea, and her idea was to shock me. But she didn't know me, and I took her aside and said, look, none of us are without prejudice. We all have prejudice about something. But if you want to marry a black gentleman, that's all right with me, because the result of your marriage is bound to be very interesting, at say the very least. But if you come back with a South African apartheid fanatic, there I draw the line. I'll say out of the house.
The way I see it is with Australia, it's always been a very devious kind of racism. It's always been well hidden, whereas you get South Africa, it was out there in your face. It was blatant. The thing that's sold overseas, you know, wonderful down under country of sun and koalas and kangaroos. This land is drenched with blood.
For Aboriginals, it may even get worse before it gets better. And this woman may be the reason why. Pauline Hanson leads the controversial One Nation Party. She's agreed to a rare interview at an airport, where the extreme security reflects the extremity of her views. Are the Aboriginals still in need of more help than you are? You seem to think that they're privileged.
If you're an Aboriginal, you can actually, your child can get free tuition, you get free travel, you get health checks, you can get a cheaper housing loan, anything from 3 to 5% housing loans, when we have people out there who are non-Aboriginal who would dearly love to be able to get cheaper housing loans. And when you have applying for government positions or jobs where being an Aboriginal gives you high priority in getting that job compared to maybe the white Anglo-Celtic European male, I don't think that's equality there. I call it the Aboriginal industry out there because no one has been game enough to stand up and say, well, where has the money gone? What has happened to it? Has asked for accountability.
Yes, but in the past, before you ever became active, the reputation of Australia towards its own Aboriginal population has not always been a shining example to the rest of the world.
I get so annoyed because I have to answer to the fact of being a patriotic Australian, you know. Patriotism is not racism, and criticism is not racism. So, you know, I just sort of say, well, have a look in your own backyard before you question me and how proud I am of my country.
There is, in Pauline Hanson's strident language, an echo of Port Arthur Prison in Tasmania. Intolerance whose ancestry belongs more with Australia's jailers than its monosyllabic convicts. I've come back to Tasmania, where a century ago Twain spoke of the wanton slaughter of kangaroo-chasing innocents. He believed the Tasmanian Aborigines to be extinct, but through mixed parentage, their blood has endured. Until the 1960s, it was government policy to remove half-caste children for assimilation in white institutions. Derek Pearden was snatched from his mother at the age of 4. After 42 years, he has at last plucked up the courage to return home, to see the grave of a mother he hardly knew. The prospect has made him a nervous wreck.
Well, it's been very hard. It's been 3 nights in a row. Very little sleep. A lot of nervousness, I guess, you know. Just looking forward to going back, I guess, and a bit tense. It's going to be very hard.
Why do you think so?
Emotional. To go to Mum's grave and...
This promises to be the most emotional day of his life. And as he thinks back, he begins to recall details of his childhood.
The only memories that I can sort of look back on is the old school. Another thing, a rubber football. Day in, day out, kicking this football into the the pine trees. I can remember doing that on my own. Just a little rubber football.
Do you think it'll still be there?
Don't think so. No. 42 years. A long time.
Their hearts broke and they died. So wrote Twain of Tasmania's Aboriginals. Today, Derek's flight with his sister Annette is a direct echo of that sadness. Derek had been dreaming of this visit for years.
They're out there, look. That little red roof, yeah.
The profound emotions behind Derek's long wait burst through at the airstrip's tin shack.
42 years. It's a long time. Very emotional.
Another sister, Nola, who has no idea of Derek's return home, has been collected by Annette.
Just put my bag in here.
Derek must be coaxed from the safety of the shack.
Put your cigarette out. Okay, she does nothing.
Hello, Dub.
You made it. Oh.
He greets his long-lost sister, a first step into the past. And then the climax. Observing him, his sister Annette remembers.
The Northern Boys' Home had rung to say that Derek was very upset and he kept crying for his mother. His words were, "Mama, Mama." And I just said to Mrs. Weir, "Well, I'm his Mama, Mama."
For thousands of Aborigines like Derek, a living trauma is the daily price of their history.
Oh, where's not your mum? Oh, fucking hell! I've never ever met me fucking mother. I wish I hadn't met her.
Come on, baby.
I wanted to meet her.
Come on, darling. Some things are just not meant to be.
Yeah.
Okay? This is why you're here today, sweetheart. This wasn't meant to be, okay?
Why?
The timing has to be right. That we meet for the first time as sisters and brother. And I'm very grateful for that.
Oh, I think it's absolutely. I'm very flattered and honoured to be present when this occurs.
But tonight I might get drunk and I don't think the family will come near me, Sir Peter. I'm terrible when I'm drunk.
Are you?
Oh, shocking. Shocking.
Well, you want me to take that away?
No, thank you. I'm enjoying it. Oh, if you insist. Don't pass it on to Nala, she'll drink it.
Oh, what a family. What have you discovered?
To me, Derek's pain shows why politicians like Pauline Hanson would do well to listen, and why Australia must come to terms with its open wounds. Across the water in New Zealand is a very different story of wounds and bandages. New Zealand, famously described by Twain as snowed over with sheep. Here, ancestry means power. Unlike the Aborigines, the Maoris knew how to meet invasion. Twain considered them a superior breed of savages who had extracted from Queen Victoria a unique treaty written in both English and Maori. They believed in taking a queen at her word And 160 years on, they are holding her to it.
Maunga to Roto. It's good to know where one is. And I'm now driving in New Zealand, and we're off to a tribunal which is taking place in a remote valley somewhere here. Oh my God, what a view. It's magnificent. One has the impression the countryside has been washed this morning together with the smalls and the tablecloths and all the other things. What are they all doing? Relieving themselves? Oh. Is this the courtroom?
Nations don't often go back into the past to put misdeeds right. Here, sensibly, the Maori and the white man had recognized the possibility of shaking hands rather than waving spears and firing muskets. Flanked by female Maori elders, retired Judge Dame Augusta Wallace and myself as invited guest are called to a sitting of the Waitangi Tribunal at Kaipara on North Island. "160 years ago, the Waitangi Treaty accepted British rule so long as Maori rights and culture were protected. Today, armies are legal ones. Their only physical engagement, the hongi, the traditional rubbing of noses, complete with its own peculiar rules of the road.
I never know whether to come on the left or the right. Head on. Head on.
Meanwhile, for a better view, the Queen who started all this, Victoria, is moved in with the rest of us.
Monsieur Hercule Poirot, you may have needed your detective skills later, sir.
I've never rubbed noses with so many suspects.
It is the Maoris themselves who want Victoria as a guarantor of their cause. Is she important?
Yeah, for as long as the Crown is sitting amongst us.
You think she'll bring you luck?
Oh no, it's justice, not luck. Justice, that's all we ask for.
A Maori claimant recites his wakapapa, a family tree much like an enormous relay race through history, affirming the ancestry which will endorse his claim to the long-lost rights adjudicated here by the Waitangi Tribunal.
And it traces my descent from Haumoe Warangi, who married two Hurihia. They begat two Tenga, who begat two Hukia. Two Hukia begat Tararu, Tararu begat Tararu ai begat Ruke.
She's using shorthand, I believe. Were any of these, I wonder, misbegat?
Of the 58th Northamptonshire Regiment, responsible for killing her father. They begat Rose, my mother.
In almost permanent session throughout New Zealand, the Waitangi Tribunal airs complex grievances like this, nurtured since 1840.
They were desperate to form a bolster between themselves and Ngāpuhi.
There are some non-Maori who say the Maori are trying to take things they're not entitled to, and there are some Maori who, in the ultimate extreme, would say to everyone who was not Maori, not tangata whenua, go and live somewhere else.
Yes. But of course, that's the charming. I remember there was an American questionnaire to the Red Indian population asking them whether they thought that America should get out of Vietnam.
Yeah.
And the reply came, yes, and also leave the United States. That was asking for trouble, that question,
Well, of course it was. And you do have a small group, but there are some Maori in New Zealand who are very resentful and have very radical views. And they would like to see all people, non-Maori, go somewhere else.
Yes.
Simple as that.
Yes.
The following day, as a non-Maori, I was invited to a place few non-Maoris ever see. It was to generate the only nude scene in this entire series. The Maori heartlands of Rotorua boast stunning natural wonders. Some for tourists, but not this one. The healing thermal baths are kept exclusively for the Maori villagers. I've been promised a naked swim with several people as yet unknown to me. It seemed churlish not to investigate. At the tribunal, I had heard the wakapapa, the chanted family tree. And in a tattoo parlour in Wellington, the importance of Maori roots was about to take a more startling turn. After seeing tamoko, as this facial art is called, Twain had concluded that European faces look unpleasant and ignoble. Perhaps Western noses lack flexibility. Here, tattoo artist Ranji Skipper believes he is reinscribing the same patterns Twain saw, and with them a lost identity. It's delicate work.
What they would initially do is use a flat edge blade made from a wing bone of a tōroa, and they would cut open the skin and then place the pigment in the skin. The cut was sufficiently deep enough to go through the cheek, because the recipient of the moko then sat up and had a break and put his pipe into his mouth and had a smoke, and the smoke was coming out his cheek, so sufficiently deep enough to go through a centimetre of flesh.
You've now given that up?
Next stage. Next week.
Next week? Well, I was wondering, because I think if you still continued it, you'd probably be qualified in 10 minutes to do a heart transplant.
Probably.
Jeff, why are you having this done?
Well, it's my rights.
Oh, it's absolutely all right. I'm not trying to take it away from you.
No.
I'm not rushing in with the fire brigade saying, stop, stop, stop. But does having a moko affect you at all?
Yeah, it means I won't be able to get a job.
Oh, well, it could be an advantage. It depends on your personality. I don't know anything about you.
See, with the resurgence of the demands for Māori sovereignty, one of those forms in which identities is showing itself is not only in the Indigenous language, but also in the Indigenous visual language, which is moko.
Well, what are you doing now? You're actually...
This is where the fun begins. So before anyone does ask, yes, it is painful, but it's not unbearable. So what he's feeling at the moment is likeable to a piece of broken glass being dragged across your skin.
Oh, well, thanks for elucidating me on that point. Ranger Skipper says his tattoos mark a return to the Maori's fighting identity. But few win more battles than the man sharing my buggy. Morning, fellow. Sir Tiffany O'Regan, half Maori, half Irish, is a politically sharp tribal leader who knows how to work the system for his people. Through the Waitangi Tribunal, he's proved claims to ancient fishing rights, winning an offer of £60 million compensation for his tribe. Today, he's travelling to South Island to sell the deal to his people.
Maori and Polynesian people tended to name features very much after the personal parts of ancestors, because that was a way of claiming the land for your particular tribal group. And so if there was a rock standing up out of the water, and that was a valuable fishing rock, that'll be the upstanding penis of a particular ancestor. And if you were to go and fish there, without due permission, to take the fish and to eat it is, in Maori terms, traditional terms, to be seen as to be eating that particular part of someone's ancestor. And that would bring those descendants out with a just cause of war. causes of war, and all societies tend to be fairly fragile, to do with ego, but ultimately with assets.
Yeah. And what is a penis if it isn't an asset? I quite agree.
Well, I don't know.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
When Captain Cook came this way, his logbook idly reported Maoris fishing some 12 miles from the shore. And over 200 years later, Cook's passing note has proved crucial, used in court to prove the ancient Maori dependence on these waters. Journey's end. Tonight in Kaikoura, another phase in the Maori struggle for compensation will reach a climax. In their hearts, most know they'll never recover their true historical losses. But pragmatically, Sir Tiffany will be urging acceptance of this latest offer.
She's speaking about you. You keep your shoes on. It's one of the marks of rank for a senior visitor. At last.
In the intriguingly decorated village hall, Sir Tiffany addresses the problems that can come from being well endowed.
Can we grow fast enough and well enough to manage those assets? Because they are huge. You are in danger of being in the top 10 of New Zealand's capitalised enterprises within a very short order. So it's a question really of a fight that you've inherited. And for the first time in our history, you actually have the chance of saying, we'll take that, finish the fight, seal it, and go on, or you can hand on to your children the battle. And that, I think, is a very, very important decision.
As compensation for fishing rights long lost, the tribe has now accepted the £60 million offer. It's a start, but for some Maoris, as Sir Tiffany recognises, nothing will ever be enough. It's the grievance itself, he says, which gives some their identity. It's time to go. Bound for India, where I'm promised an encounter with a collection of dildos.
Yeah, this is the heavy one.
If I could get there.
All passengers bear forward to 2391 to Sydney, Otago, Wellington, and Port East. On now, this is a great name of cruising.
I better hurry.
I'm waiting for my wheelchair.